Greetings. We're here at the 21st Annual UFO Congress in Phoenix, Arizona. And we're here with one of its major players, as far as I'm concerned, and one of its strongest point of interest. So I'm going to take an attempt here at his name again because it is unique of itself. This is Antonio Hunanes. Huneos. Okay, we got that right. Huneos. Okay. And Antonio has covered the UFO field and the conferences for 35 years. My experience with this started about 5 years ago, and of course he was one of the key people of my interest. He speaks with such confidence that you just leave his presence with no doubts, and he speaks from facts and research and everything that an inquirer would need in order to satisfy their curiosities or even their questions. In some cases, even their disbeliefs. So we want to actually find out from him where this is all going. Our previous discussions were, okay, I don't think there are any peoples in the world with a good set of intelligence and perspective could question anymore that we definitely have visitors, that we definitely have a UFO community that exists around us. The questions that I have, and I want Antonio and those who are speaking at this particular conference in 2012, where are we going from here? It's not so much that we have to convince anybody anymore. Okay, it's what are we going to do with what we know? What are we going to do with the world that is changing, that has such economic crisis, that has such a problem with pollution and energy, with the people who are very suppressed, of where we have one that has and one that has not. In a Buddhist perspective, to find the balance in the middle road in this. This is where I would like those questions answered. So if we can just move forward with that, Antonio, if you could give us your full perspective of that. And thank you so much for taking this time, because definitely you have a major role here. I know you're working 24 hours a day on this. So
right.
What are you, give me some answers. What are you doing here? What is your reason for all of this?
Well, of course, the International UFO Congress, which has existed for 21 years.
Mm-hmm.
But since last year, it was taken over. It's under new management by Open Minds Production.
And wasn't that because of a death?
No.
Or just because someone decided to?
No. Yeah, basically, well, the International UFO Congress, and this is important to know, even though most people used to think of it as Laughlin, Nevada, because for 16 years it was in Laughlin, but it started in Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
It was created by Wendell Stevens, the late Lieutenant Colonel Wendell Stevens, in 1991, and it started in Tucson. So it came back to Arizona after we took it over. Full circle, correct. And it's also full circle for me because I was a speaker at the original 1991 symposium.
Fantastic.
And,
so you're one of our grandfathers.
I have become. I was a younger person back then. You know, I was not a senior ufologist, but I guess I have become one. So obviously what happened is that Open Minds Production, the company where I work as a full-time researcher and editor for the Open Minds magazine, and basically I'm sort of like a historian there too, because I know the subject for so long. I've been in this business for, well, business in quotation marks, for 35 years.
Yes.
And so we basically, it's the same Congress, but it's under new management, but we also improved the quality. And well, this year I'm particularly proud and that was my connection, that we were able to get a general from the Chilean Air Force. Mm-hmm. He's a retired general, but he runs the official project to investigate UFOs by the government of Chile. So,
isn't that fantastic?
So this is a historical, to have it in a popular UFO Congress open to the public and not a closed meeting or anything, to have an actual head of an official agency.
Yes.
But also what people have to realize is that in South America, which there are several countries now that have official UFO departments, the public attitude is much more open. So that's why he's here, because the way they see it in South America, you don't have to be in a contradiction. If you have an official agency with the public, you don't need a conspiracy theory. You can work together. I mean,
that's right.
Yeah, it's a mystery, and it's a mystery for all of us, whether we're officials or unofficial.
Yeah.
So that's one of the great achievements of this particular meeting. And of course, tomorrow the general is going to give his presentation.
This is so powerful, so good. But what I've noticed in my interest in it over the past 5 years is you've managed to get very credible names.
Yes.
Very powerfully positioned people, very much on the scene people who are now willing to talk about what they saw.
Yeah.
Reporting what really went on that the news never gave us.
Right. Well, I think what is happening is it is changing. The attitudes towards UFOs, and I can talk from firsthand experience. I mean, when I started it, this was considered a pretty weird phenomenon.
No, I know.
Yeah,
I know.
And people would question even your mental, ability or whatever. Even my own relatives, like saying, "Well, you're a talent." They would try to drop hints. Like, you're such talented. Why don't you write about something else or something like that?
Why don't you write about something real, right?
Right. So it's great that in a way, things are changing. And I mean, there's been a number of markers. We had in 2009, we had that conference on astrobiology at the Vatican. Which I wrote. It was a cover story in the second issue of the Open Minds magazine, which I did. And this was the Vatican.
I know.
Even though it was not about UFOs per se, but about aliens, and SETI, searching for aliens in outer space. But nevertheless, the fact that the Vatican was willing to sponsor an official, and this was totally official. This was a conference sponsored by the Pontifical Academy of Sciences, and it got a lot of attention. Then we had another very important. Well, there was a meeting in the Royal Society too in England about the same thing about SETI. But then there was a meeting at the Global Competitiveness Forum in Saudi Arabia, of all places.
Wow.
This was this was in 2011, I think. And they had a session, not on SETI, on UFOs. And
Fantastic.
They invited Stanton Friedman and Nick Pope and Jacques Vallée.
Oh, good.
And what was interesting is this is a business meeting. Competitiveness, right? So
Right.
I think it is sponsored by the Saudi Arabian government and by the prince of the royal family there. And the idea was to identify trends for the future.
Oh.
So I think there was a message there.
I think there's a big message
a big
there.
message, and also considering that Saudi Arabia is such a conservative society.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
You have the Vatican, which is the head of the Catholic faith, and then you have Saudi Arabia, which is the center of the Islamic faith, and they're all talking about aliens.
I know.
What's going on?
Yeah.
Things are changing, right?
Yes, they are. They have really changed. Can you give us a little bit more so that those who haven't heard actually what the Catholic Church's position is now on if there are? They're still doing the if there are aliens.
If
there's this
correct.
soul
They're
issue.
still doing the if. Well, in the Catholic Church, you have to divide the official opinions and the unofficial opinions. We'll get to the unofficial opinions in a minute. But the official opinion, when the head of the Vatican Observatory speaks, that's official.
Yes.
And the name of that fellow is a Jesuit astronomer. He's from Argentina, actually, which is kind of interesting too, because there's a lot of interest in UFOs in Argentina. And they even created a commission in Argentina recently, the Argentinian Air Force. So the name of this individual is Father Funes. And so he got named the director of the Vatican Observatory. He's obviously an astronomer, has a PhD in astronomy. And he gave an interview to the Vatican Observer. Osservatore Romano is the name in Italian. The Vatican Observer is the official newspaper of the Vatican. And they published the interview with this astronomer and priest. And what was the title of the interview? The Extraterrestrial is My Brother.
What is that? Is a changing world, right?
So that's not an accident.
No, it isn't.
Because if it was a local paper, it's one thing, but this is the official newspaper of the Vatican.
Yeah.
And in any publication, including our own magazine, the headline, the titles are
to
think over, right? The editors discuss what should be the title for this. So obviously that was a decision by the management there. Yes. And it's no accident. I mean, if they put that title, they must have had a reason.
Yes.
They wanted to convey a message. And I think the message was very clear that when the discovery of aliens is made public, or finally we discover a planet that we get radio signals, or we finally admit that a UFO sighting is real, or however it happens, it should not be a contradiction with Catholic dogma.
Right.
I think that was the message.
I think it is too.
Because after all, like they say in that interview, God is the creator of the universe, and He could have created as many intelligences as He pleases. I mean,
and that's intelligent to say that, isn't it?
Right.
It's
correct.
not dogma anymore.
No,
it
it's not
opens
dogma.
up a wide
But
range
in
of
the Christian, and now not just the Catholic, but in the Christian dogma, there are some problems. Not so much the creation of intelligences, because that is kind of a given, but you have a couple of theological problems. One is the original sin.
Yes.
So, according to the Christian dogma, there's an original sin in our society, right, in our world. But if there's intelligence in another world, did they have also original sin? Did they fail from grace? That's a theological problem, not a scientific problem. And then the other one is...
Be clear on that, right?
but this has been a problem that the theologians have been, mulling over for years. And the other one is the situation with Jesus. The redemption. Is it a redemption just of humanity, or of all of beings around the universe? And that's why I think the Vatican has chosen a scientific route rather than a theological route to deal with this problem.
Yes.
Because those problems are still tricky.
And they're discussing. It's something like what I like in what I've learned in all the years of study of theology is in Judaism there's an acceptance that it's a constant talking about, a constant researching, a constant sharing, a constant evolving base of belief. And that's the only sane explanation to it when you really look at it all,
Yeah. It's so eventually they will come up with some theological explanation, I'm sure, for the redemption and the original sin and all these problems. But meanwhile, they're pursuing a scientific route instead, because there is an Academy of Sciences in the Vatican as well, and they have an observatory, even in Arizona, right, in Mount Graham, in southern near Tucson. So that's quite significant. But so that's the official track. But at the same time, there has been an unofficial track in the Vatican going for quite a number of years. And this goes all the way back to the 1960s, where there was a Jesuit theologian called Domenico Grasso. And all this was in my original article in the second issue of Open Minds magazine. And Domenico Grasso was a very well-educated man, as most Jesuits are. But he was not an astronomer, he was a theologian. And so he discussed already all these problems about the original sin and all this kind of stuff from a theological point of view. But he came to the acceptance that we had to accept the existence of aliens. And he used to go to conferences in Europe and present papers.
Wow.
So this was already back in the 60s. Then, in the 90s, there came another famous figure. It was a theologian, but he was also a demonologist. And this was the famous Monsignor Conrado Balducci, whom I had the pleasure of meeting personally a couple of times. Balducci gave me his card, which I still have in my files, and his card said, theologian-demonologist. So here was, and he was the official exorcist of the Vatican.
Yes.
So this man was an expert on demons and angels and all these kinds of things. And he wrote a famous book, which was a bestseller in Italy, called El Diavolo, the Devil. It was an explanation of the devil in theology and in exorcism and all that. But when it came to UFO phenomenon and extraterrestrial beings, his opinion, now he would make very clear that this was his personal opinion, that he was not talking on behalf of the Vatican.
Right.
So his personal opinion was that the beings behind the craft that we see are neither demons nor angels, but extraterrestrial beings.
Wow.
And what he used to say is that, yes, demons and angels do exist. Of course, he was a theologian and demonologist.
Right.
And they do fly, but they don't need machines.